What's going on, everyone? Welcome back. Here we are for another lesson where we're going to be composing a song together. And I hope some of you actually recognized what I was just riffing on. That was our chord progression we came up with last week. That's crazy. It sounds like a full, real song. Someone even said in the chat last week that Elton John should be, I forget what the comment was, but they said it sounded like an Elton John song. You're not wrong. I mean, we've got a solid chord progression here. And that's because we put in the work last week, so today we're going to be building on what we did. We are composing a song together. Last week we focused on the harmony, right? We got the basic format down for the chord progression. This week, in week 2, we're going to be focusing on the melody, okay? Melody is, I think this one's pretty obvious for a lot of you guys. Even outside of piano, if you just listen to the radio, to your favorite song, the melody is what's being sung. And even in instrumental music, we've got a clear melody. It can help us. In fact, it can be the make or break of whether a song is a great song or not. Does it have a great melody? So today we're going to cover how do we come up with melodies? How do we make it easier for ourselves? It's not just 88 options at all times, right? That would be intimidating. Today we'll talk about how we can narrow down our choices and craft good melodies. And then just as a preview, don't forget, the week after, we're going to start to rhythmicize what we've come up with. Today, our melody might be a little more simple sounding rhythmically, but next week, what we'll do is we'll tweak what we've written this week, and we'll add rhythm to it. I like to compose in stages like that, where I'm not afraid to go back and tweak or even edit or completely remove something that I've written at an earlier stage. So that's going to be part of this too. But what I like to do now, before we dig into the lesson in too much detail, is go ahead and hit you with the first pop quiz. That's right, for those who are new, and I do see a couple of newbies in the chat. I see Valerie Brown, first time live. Great to see you, Valerie. Thanks for joining us. Martin Rubin, we hear you loud and clear, or guess I should say I read you loud and clear. Tina Miller, back for more. Nice to see you, Tina. Lynn, good to see you guys. Chad Miller, keyboard, blank music sheet, and pencil ready. I love it. That's the spirit. All right, we're going to be writing today. So the first thing we're going to do today, though, with this pop quiz is we're going to test our memory from earlier in the month. We're going to see if you guys were paying attention. For those who are new, what I want you to do here is write a 1 and then a dash and then your answer to the question, which I will ask in just 1 second. But that's going to help us know when we read the comments in the chat that this is an answer for question number 1. So if you win, what you get is a free song credit for the Playground Sessions interactive app. I know a lot of you who are regulars around these parts already know that, but for you newbies, we're doing a free trial in the app right now for 30 days with no payment up front, and you can explore that app and use your free song credit that you get from your pop quiz, okay? Here is question number 1. Last week we talked about key signatures, and we picked a key signature for our song. So here's the question. How many flats are in our key signature? So this will in part require you to remember what we did last time, right? We picked a key and we had our chord progression within that key. I'm looking for the first correct answer here. I want to see 1 dash and then your answer, which is how many flats are in our key signature. And now I'll give you that hint. The key signature was B flat major. That's the key we're in. How many flats are in that key signature? And I want our first correct answer. I'm going to play for a minute and let you guys just trickle in with that. All right, let's check in with the chat. We've got a couple of answers coming through. And great work, everyone. Every answer I see is correct. So great job, Chad Miller. Our correct answer, our first correct answer goes to you. So that boom in all caps is appropriate. That's what I'm talking about, Chad. Right out of the gate with a win. Good work. All right, so you know the drill, I think, Chad. I think we'll put a comment here for you just in case, or for you new people out there, if you want to know how to redeem your song credit. We'll post a comment here that tells you how to get in touch with our support team. There you go. We're going to do another pop quiz later on, but congrats, Chad and Valerie Brown, Jackson Bryant, Lynn, Tina Miller, Dave, Ami. Hey, that seems like a new name. Welcome to the live stream. You guys, great work. 2 flats. The key signature is B flat and E flat. My mistake, there's no E in there. So now what I'd like to do is kick into our lesson here, and I'd like to review what we did last week. Let's go ahead and get our notation up on screen. You guys remember this? What we've got here is our chord progression. We've got our first 16 measures. And I want to just play through it one time before we start talking about melody. And I'll give you a hint, that B flat scale I just played is going to be our anchor when we start adding melody today. But as a review, here's where we were from last week. Ready? 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, C minor, 2, 3, again, 2, 3, 1, 3. Now we're changing our pattern, G minor to F, second line, just like the first phrase. Now here we're going to change our pattern, going to the 5 chord, and then 3, and then 2, and then 1. Okay, I'm having some fun with it here, I know, but that was all based off of the core foundation that we see here on screen. That was just a bit of me riffing off of what we came up with together last week. That's pretty sweet, right? So what I want to do is just go ahead and dive right into the melodic content, okay? And in order to do that, what I want to do is review our B flat major scale. Now, some of you may not be reviewing this. This may be a new lesson on the B flat major scale. But even so, I'm not going to spend too much time here. What I want to do is just get to the creation here, okay? But in order to do that, let me give you this lesson on the scale. So we have 2 flats in our key signature. We're going to start on B flat below middle C. Then we go to C, then D, then E flat. There's our second flat for the scale. Bring our thumb under, F, G, A, and B flat. So those are our notes from the major scale in the key of B flat, okay? There's B flat, C, D, E flat, F, G, A, B flat. Now, even if we just played a scale from bottom to top, if we did it with our chord progression underneath, it actually might even sound like a melody even as a scale, all right? Let's try that. Not much of a melody when we keep repeating it like that, but you can start to see, I hope, that that one scale could sound good or correct over many of those chords, if not all of those chords. So that's a pretty cool concept. I want to first show you guys that B flat major scale so we can use that once we start to create the melody on top of our chord progression. So we're going to do that in just a second, guys, but I want to send you to a really cool video here, and I just want to get you guys inspired a little bit. We're talking about what you can do in the right hand over a certain chord or something simple in the left hand. And of course, we're keeping this difficulty level accessible to everyone. But I want to show you something that our friend Justin Kauflin, who you may have seen before, he's contributed a couple of lessons to an upcoming course we're doing on improvisation. And he has a lesson here where he's just kind of riffing with his right hand with some single notes as well as some chords, and then kind of going back and forth. I just wanted to show this to you guys so you can share in the joy I get when I watch this. Justin really inspires me when it's time to sit down and create. So here's a video with Justin Kauflin demoing some stuff on the G major chord. But when we come back from his video, I'll apply some of what he's doing in our key of B flat, and we'll get back to composing. All right, here's Justin Kauflin.
Start with G major. And what can you do? Obviously, you can play melodies. You know, what do you hear in your head? You know. Very simple, just a melody. And I'm playing the chord in the left hand. If you want to vary it up, maybe play octaves in the left hand. Maybe get some more energy in there. What does it kind of sound like? It kind of sounds, it's like some sort of folk, but it's great. You want to change it up, maybe actually use some chords in the right hand to vary it up. So you have. And then if you know a little bit more, maybe throw some of the other chords that work in G major. So C major, A minor. Back to melody.
I like that a lot.
Okay.
Again, wow, super cool, right? So that's Justin Kauflin. You're going to be seeing more from him in the months to come as we start releasing some new piano content throughout the year, but more to come on that later. What's going on, by the way? I'm seeing some new names here. I was wondering if we would see Sarah Pickles today. Everyone say hey to Sarah Pickles. And everybody throw down a pickle emoji if you think that she's got the most fun name in our group of regulars. Andrew, I'm going to ask you to go ahead. Actually, Aiden, I'll ask you to put a pickle emoji down for Sarah. No rush on that, though, because I know you've got work to be doing too, but that's important. Sarah Pickles, we love seeing you here. Oh no, you say you had a couple of bad practice days. Your hands don't seem to be keeping up with your head. Sarah, I'm sorry to hear you're discouraged. Feel free to take a break. Sometimes it's good to get some fresh air, so to speak. Take a couple days off and return with a fresh perspective. Often when your hurdle is a mental one, that can be the right medicine. So Sarah, she says, please no. Oh no, did I just unleash? Sorry, Sarah. We just love seeing you here in the chat, and I know everyone else does too. So, hey, let's get into our song, you guys. We've got our chords here, and really what's left to do now is to figure out our melody, and I want to start by using our B-flat major scale. And what I want to do is just play that scale over each one of these chords and give you guys a sense for how that sounds. I mean, it's important to use your ear when you're composing, and often that means trial and error. Try something. Does that sound good? No, try a different one. Does that sound good? Yeah, but maybe you could try something that sounds even better, right? That can be part of your process. So what I want to do now is just let you hear what that scale sounds like on top of each one of these chords. Okay, and we've got some repeat chords. The next one we see that's new is G minor. That's nice. Then F. Getting fancier, but that's all just still the major scale. And I think that's all of our different chords, guys. It's as easy as that. And then we just see some repeat chords. Actually, we have a D minor towards the end. That's a new one. So I think it's clear, I hope it's clear to you guys that the B-flat major scale is a well from which we can pull and create our melody, right? We can pull from any of those notes really at any time, and it's going to sound good with the harmony that we've written from last week. So that should be comforting. We're not going to just pick from any note across the keyboard. We're going to pick from one of those 7 notes. And for now, I want us to just narrow in to this range, because remember, we're writing something that is accessible, hopefully, to most of our users. And that means we don't want to have a right hand that's flying all around. Maybe we'll get a more advanced version of our song down the road, but for now, let's lock it in to about 1 to 2 octaves here. In fact, why not even just from middle C-ish to maybe up to here. Okay, so we'll keep it to this kind of 2-octave range in the right hand. And that's really only a handful of different notes, so we can start to figure out how we'll build our melody. But what's tricky is that you need more than just the scale. You need more than just the notes. We need to craft something that I just refer to as patterns. We need to be pattern-minded here. And we've already talked a little bit about that with our left hand. Last week we talked about starting the phrase with the 1 chord and then the 4 chord. And we liked that. We wanted to set that up as a pattern that repeats. So then we started it again. That was our first repetition of the pattern. And then we deviated a little bit for some contrast, but then for the 3rd phrase we went right back to our same pattern, right? We know that using patterns and repetition can help music sound like songs, sound intentional, sound like a composition. And that's what we're aiming for here. So the same thing is true for the right hand. We want to keep things simple. We want to find areas to repeat and then therefore create some patterns. And let me just show you how that might work. I'll do a couple of demos for you here. I'm going to just pick one hand position within our scale. I'm going to keep it to here. There's no wrong way to start this. Again, we're doing some trial and error. And I'm going to stick to this hand position, which gives me the F, which is the 5th scale degree in the key of B flat. Gives me the G, which is the 6th scale degree, the A, which is the 7th, the B flat, which is the root. That's an important note. And then if I want, I could even use my pinky up here for C into the next octave. It's still part of our scale. So here is the position I'm going to start with. And I'm going to play through my progression a little bit in the left hand. And just going to isolate the first 4 measures and loop it. So I just want to focus on the first 4 measures first, which means these 3 chords. I'm going to start super simple in the right hand with a note that I know will sound good, and that is B flat. That note happens to work across all 3 of those chords, so if we wanted to, we could have that be a simple melody. Then maybe we rest, or maybe we tie it over. It's as simple as that. That could be our melody here. And then we could then take that pattern and repeat it and tweak it, deviate, just like we did with the left hand from last week. You see how that works? Or we can expand on that a little more. We probably want more than one note. So how would we do that? Well, we want to look for patterns. We want to look for shapes that we can turn into patterns. And so here I like to toggle between the root and the 5th, arguably the 2 most important notes in our scale. And that's, of course, if we're trying to make it sound like we're in the key of B flat, which we are. And so what I want to do is have those be our anchor notes. And then I want to use some notes from our other 3 options as sort of some color tones in between. The last thing I'm going to think about is imposing some rest or some pauses in my right hand. If I do that, I think we're going to already have some options for a melody. So let's see what that could look like. And then I'm going to go to you guys in the chat and I'm going to enlist your help. We need to work on this together. I'm just repeating the first 4 measures, remember? Now, I hope you noticed I was just sort of riffing there and building on what I was doing. I naturally stumbled upon a little pattern. Just a simple 2-note toggle. That became the basis for my melodic phrases. Right? I mean, you can go endless different directions here. So that's what I want to do with you guys. And let's go ahead and get started on that now. I'm going to look to the chat. Andrew, why don't you highlight our first blank right hand measure? Don't be afraid, you guys. The blank canvas is not intimidating. It doesn't have to be. Okay? So how do we want to start this? There's a lot of ways we can go, so let's narrow it down. I'm going to ask, should we start with the root or the fifth? That's important. We've already identified those as the two defining notes in the key. Similarly, how left hand last week we talked about the one chord and the 5 chord being super important. Same goes in the melody. So I need some help. Should we start with the root or the fifth? Go ahead and get in your chat, guys, and help me out. We need to vote. In the meantime, I'm going to riff a little bit on this, and I'm going to start just playing different roots and different fifths in the right hand. You guys just can write 1 or 5, or you could write root, fifth. We need to figure out how we're going to start this thing. Here's some fifths. Okay, here's some roots. All right, I'm seeing some stuff come in. The root I find easy to build off, Sarah Pickles says. I can agree with that. The root's a great starting point. Jackson Bryant also agrees. Start with the root. It's a nice starting point for sure. Root, root, root. Chad Miller, root. Lynn, Dave. All right, guys, that was easy. Let's go with the root. So, how about we put it right in the middle of the staff? Yep. And that one, for the record, for those who are new to reading music, that's going to be up here. Here's middle C. We're going to start not here, but on this root. And to me, that means, well, I should say that helps me determine where I want to go next. Range is super important. And Andrew brought up a good point before our lesson started. We were talking about range, and he said, we don't want to have too much distance in between the hands. We don't want to play a song like this. Right? That's some things, there's a few things wrong maybe there, but the big one is there's too much of a gap between the hands and it sounds unnatural. And so when I have my first chord down here and I have my first note here, I'm already thinking that I want to start to bridge this gap a little bit. We don't have to jump way down, but I don't want to go much higher than I already am. So that tells me my next notes might be lower. That helps me figure out a hand position. It helps me figure out an arc to my melody. Remember, guys, we're going to be adding more rhythm next week. And so for today, we're going to keep the rhythms real simple. They don't all have to be quarter notes, but we're going to keep them simple for now. Andrew, can we just get 3 quarter notes in this measure? Next, we go to E flat. Now, one thing to keep in mind when we're crafting melodies is it's very pleasing to the ear when we can find common notes in the melody. When we change chords in the left hand, if we can have a note that stays the same between the chords, it's just satisfying to the ear. And so that is something that you don't have to do, but it's one tool in your toolbox, and arguably a good and important one. All right, so if we can do that, we can, but we don't have to. Let's take a vote. Should we keep the B flat or should we change to a new note? Here's keeping the B flat. If we go to a new note, it should be one of the notes that's in the new chord. So I'm going to say either G or E flat. Here's G. Here's E flat. Now, B flat is the root of the B flat chord. So when we go to the E flat chord, we may not want to also play the root of that chord in the melody. That might start to sound a little stiff. And so we could change to the G. That's nice. I also like keeping it. And I'm seeing some votes come in. I'm seeing Tina Miller saying keep it. Mark Hopewell, hey, from the UK, no problem, you're late. That's okay, thanks for joining us. I'm seeing one vote for stay, one vote for go to G. Dave saying B, G, B for first measure. I hope he's meaning B flat, G, and B flat. That's a good suggestion. Jackson Bryant, go to G. Okay, it seems like for the most part we're wanting to go to G. Now, Dave brings up a good point that we could B flat G and then even do something else. I think that was Dave's suggestion. First measure, B flat, G, B flat. Then we could stay on B flat in the right hand. That's nice. The other option might be to go down to G, but hold the first B flat first. Hold the first B flat a little bit longer. So 1, 2, 3, 1. We could do that. That actually sounded pretty good, right? 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. I think that's kind of a good combination of everyone's suggestions in here. So how about we write that in? Let's change that first note to a half note, and then we're going to bring that last note in the measure to a G. And then let's start the next measure with a dotted half note back to B flat. All right, now we have some stuff that we could step back from and look at. We have something that could become a pattern. Right now we have this rhythm, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. That could be a rhythmic pattern. It could be a melodic pattern. We can do that same kind of pattern in a different place in the scale. Let me show you what that might look like. I'm going to make that a pattern that moves around a little bit. At the end there, I kind of inverted it, the half note, and then I went up to a note, and then down to finish it. So there's all sorts of stuff we could do there, just from that little seed of an idea. Honestly, that's the main takeaway I want that you guys take away from today's lesson, is that you can start with the simplest of ideas, and that can literally flower into something much more complex and beautiful. I like what we've got so far. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Now, here let's talk about contrast, a little bit about the hands rolls here. In measure 3 and 4, in the left hand, we have the same chord twice. You could argue that when we play it that second time, there's no new material being introduced there. And so we could have room to do something in the right hand that's a little busier for that second measure. And that could look something like this. I hope you heard that same kind of pattern, but it was a little different on that second phrase. That's one way to do it. And then here we could do something busier. So, I'm going to check in with the chat, and I want to ask you guys what we like. Do we want to have the right hand do something busy in measure 4? And when I say busy, we're not going to get too complicated, but I guess I mean, do we want to play something with motion, some quarter notes, or do we want to rest? We need to have a rest at some point. So the question really is, should we put a rest in measure 3 and then put some new right hand material in measure 4? Or should we continue on into measure 3 and rest on measure 4? That's the question I have for you guys. Help me out. Then once we get these first 4 measures, I think we can move along a little faster. And that's what we did last week too, remember, because we had a 4-bar phrase. Then we were able to kind of copy and paste and make those tweaks. So are we resting in the right hand in measure 3, or are we resting in measure 4? Okay, I'm seeing right hand busy. Camille wants to have a challenge here in the melody. Tina likes motion and sweetness. Sarah Pickle says rest, then go deep. All right, that might be something like... That's one way to go deep there, I'd say. Lynn's saying rest in measure 4. So I'm getting maybe about half and half here. Let's see, Tina's saying motion and sweetness. To me, that means we should rest in measure 3. We should put some motion in measure 4. but we should keep it sweet. And so to keep it sweet, to me that means let's keep it nice and melodic and not crazy intervals, no big jumps. Let's make it singable here. So that could look like this. Just something like that. And let's go ahead and put that in. So let's make some executive decisions. We're going to put another G down there to continue that pattern. And then we will do a dotted half note for that C. And then we're going to put a rest at the beginning of this measure here. And I think what I'd like to do is actually make it a 2-count rest and then put, and then put 2 eighth notes on beat 3 of B flat and then C. And then we're going to start the next measure on D with a half note. Look at that. Andrew's quick. All right, so look at this. It's looking like a real song, right? All right, I'm going to play it now. All right, I think we got something good here. Valerie Brown is asking, anybody working on the lyrics yet? Good question. I think maybe that was you volunteering, Valerie. Feel free to come up with some lyrics about the piano, and we might feature them. Jackson Bryant's talking about rests. And rests are super important here. So right now we have 1 rest, and really it's at the end of our 4-bar phrase. Our new eighth notes, the B flat and the C that lead to the D, that is kind of part of our second phrase, or the pickups into our second phrase. So what I'd like to do now is start our second 4-bar phrase kind of similarly to how we've started the first 4-bar phrase, but then deviate from that pattern a little bit, just like the left hand does. So we're already starting on a different note. If we highlight measure 5, Andrew, and we are starting on this D, which is different than starting on our root like we did at the beginning of the song. So we're already on a different note. So to me that means the thing we need to retain and repeat would be the rhythmic pattern, which to me will mean that we do a D half note, and then we do a quarter note here. I'm going to suggest we go back to a B flat, and then I want to move up from there to an E flat in the next measure. And let's make that a dotted half note. And I think we need a rest here, and I don't want to do it in the 4th measure of the phrase like we did in the first phrase. So let's start this G minor chord in the right hand. Let's start with a rest, and let's make it a half rest. And then I want to do our two eighth notes again, because again, anywhere we can have material that we can repeat, I think it's worth exploring. But I want to do different notes. So now for our second phrase, we've got, you're expecting to hear another quarter note at the end of that measure, but we're not going to give it to whoever's listening to us. And we're going to rest on the beginning of the next measure. 1, 2. That's one way to do it. Or we could have some more motion here on measure 4. We can do 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, excuse me. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. That could be it. That's a nice little descending figure. So I guess let's put it to the chat. I'm going to see if you guys have a preference. Rest, D, C. That feels pretty good. Here's the other option. Do we want option A there, or do we want this option B? Oops. C, B flat, A. So that's something that actually leads us in to the next phrase, and it kind of gives some forward motion, right? It doesn't sound like we're ending the song here. It sounds like there's more to come, which is good, because there is. And it looks like I'm seeing now some chats coming through. The descending line is nice. Yeah, let's go with that. So, rest, D, C, B flat, A. All right, I like it. Now, we want this to sound like it's still part of the same section. We don't want to move on to a new section yet. So think about this as the second half of our first section. And because of that, I want to start it the same way that we've started our first half. So we've gotten through a little mini 4-measure phrase, and then we've had sort of a call and response with the next 4 measures. Now in measure 9, and can we highlight that, Andrew? Now I want to start this the same way that we started the first phrase. But then we can deviate. Remember, it's all about setting expectations and then changing directions. Okay? So we started like this. We're kind of moving up in the melody, but only by a little bit, right? B flat, a little higher to C. We're on D, and then we got up to E flat, but then we walked back down. So this time what I want to do is reach a little further with this gesture. I want to try and reach up high for this next note. Maybe we reach up to the high 5th, to the F. That might sound like this. I'll take it from the top. That's nice. Okay, who votes for the F? And who votes for going even higher and shooting for the moon to our high root? That would sound like this. And we'll figure out what comes next. But that's the first option. Do we want to go from B flat way up to another root? Or do we want to go down to an F and then jump up an octave? Andrew just said F, and I think why he likes F is because of how this note sounds on top of this chord. That's why I like it. If you notice, it's not one of the actual 3 notes we're playing in that chord, but it is a beautiful color tone on that E flat chord. And again, we have a common tone, right, between the chords. We have F here, and then we stay on F when we move to that 4 chord. Looks like I'm seeing, okay, all right, people like this one. So octave, all right, F, F, F. Chad says F it. Tina, F, higher root next time. Higher, octave. A couple people liking the high root. Looks like F is winning. Yeah, let's go ahead and go with the F. And guys, remember, there's more time down the road on this if we want to get higher and higher. But I really like this. We're starting the same way, and then we could do another G. And that would be nice because, again, that sets the expectation that we're repeating that first phrase content, the B flat, the G. Instead of going back to B flat, we're actually going. And that's also kind of a more interesting interval, G to an F, instead of just a straight up octave. So why don't we do that? B flat, G, and then F in the right hand. And I think we should keep the motion going here. We've been ratcheting the emotion up here, and we had the rhythmic momentum in the right hand in measure 8, kind of leading down. Now we're jumping up this unexpected octave. I think we should keep the momentum going. Here's how I recommend we do that, with more rhythm in the right hand. Check this out. That's new material. We can introduce something new if we want here. Something like that. Let's go ahead and write it in. So here's a lesson, right, built into this. If we want there to feel like there is momentum in the song, that there's forward motion, that we're building towards something, it can really help to have more rhythms. And we're going to get more into rhythm next week, of course. But we're laying the foundation down right now for us to build upon then. And having more rhythmic motion just gives you more opportunity to drive the rhythm. If you're just playing whole notes or dotted half notes the whole time, it can be hard to make it feel like it's really driving. All right, I'm going to play what we have so far, and then we need to come up with an ending. My ears tell me one thing, which doesn't mean it's right, but because we introduced new material in our third phrase, what I would like to do is to see us recall some content from either the first and second phrase, okay? So we can tie a bow around that a little bit more. What we risk if we develop this third phrase, or if we introduce something new in the fourth phrase, is we risk having it feel like a full circle when we repeat. Or I should say we risk not having it seem like a full circle when we repeat. And so, something to keep in mind here. But my ear well, we don't want to land on a B flat there for this 5 chord. I like this descending line. Maybe we can repeat it. And then hold, because the left hand has some interesting stuff now in the last 4 measures. We have a new chord, we have some new motion, and there's a new chord every measure. Okay, I know we've seen a bit of that so far, but the left hand is not on autopilot in the last 4 measures. It's working, and there's a lot going on. So I would recommend staying out of the way a little more in the right hand. So what I want to do is this. I'm playing from measure 9. Let's play that bit again. And when we land here, we'll simplify the right-hand part. So Andrew, let's add that in there. We're going to make that C. Let's make it a quarter note and then put a quarter rest on beat 2. And then let's put a B flat there. Yeah, well, we could do G, but I like B flat because B flat finishes out that 5-note position. If we descend from F, E flat, D, C, rest, B flat. That kind of feels nice. And then we'll do it again, and we'll hold the C. And then I need you guys to help me figure out these last few measures, but let me peek at the chat here. Repeat those 2 eighth notes from bar 4. Yeah, good suggestions. Will you break up a chord here and there, or is that not cool? Tina, great question. You're asking, will we break up a chord here and there, or no? And I assume that what you're meaning is, can we break up how we're playing it? Instead of doing it as a block chord in root position, can we switch that up? And the answer is, for sure, yes. And that's going to be a big part of our lesson next week when we add rhythm to this. For example, how could we add rhythm to the left hand? Well, I could just play the same chord on quarter notes. But that would get old quick, and it's not very musical. All right, so instead what we'll do is we'll figure out ways to break up our chord and play different groupings of the notes within the chord on different rhythms. An easy way to talk about that would be to call them broken chords. So here's a B flat chord. We might do it like this instead. Or open it up even more. Playing some inversions as well. And more, right? But remember, we're not going to be going into the advanced territory with this one. But yes, next week we're going to take the left hand and spice it up with some broken chords and some rhythmic activity. And in the right hand, we'll do stuff like this. Let's take a look at our first phrase, our first 4 measures. Here's the simple way we have it written now. Maybe we might do this next week when we're adding rhythm. Building on the structure that we've set here today, for example. And I'm just riffing here, but I hope that lets you know, yes, we are going to be adding some cool stuff here. And Camille is asking, when do we work on voice leading? So again, good point, that's not part of rhythm, but next week I do also hope to get into inversions as well, which will get us into some of the voice leading. When we have, when we play the left hand as it's written right now on screen, yeah, with no inversions, the voice leading is not great, right? We go from here all the way up to here and down to here. But to keep it simple and foundational for now, I like to do it as root position triads. But yeah, next week I want to start to incorporate some inversions, and that might get us looking like something like this. Okay, so using inversions makes it easier for our hand to move from one chord to the next, but it can also make it sound better, arguably, because there's better voice leading, right? So good point. We'll work on that next week as well. Chad Miller, yeah, bass arpeggios. That's basically exactly what broken chords are. So next week's going to be fun. We're going to do some arpeggiated patterns or broken chords, and we're going to do some inversions. But what we need to do now is wrap up this last phrase. And so what I want to do is utilize a tool that we haven't really done yet. We've talked about it. We did it a little bit, but I want to hammer it home a little more. And that's this notion of having a same note in the right hand while the left hand changes. It's one of the most fun things to do as a composer because it's a harmonizing exercise. Again, Andrew and I were talking about that earlier today too. You can tell we like music, right? So what I want to do at the end here is simplify in the right hand because again, we have a complicated new left hand part. Excuse me. And so what I want to do is figure out what can we do in the right hand to keep it simple and keep some common tones going. All right, so we've just done this. I'll take it from measure 9. We need a note that we can kind of sit on here that'll work over this progression. Or we could rest. Or we could do a combo. So sometimes it's worth just trying a few things and seeing what we like. Maybe we can go down to F. That's a common tone. It's an important one in this scale. It's the 5th scale degree. And I honestly love how that note sounds over the C minor chord as well, especially if we're going to resolve in the left hand to a B flat chord. Notice that F is one of the key tones in that chord as well. So if we were to find our way back down to F in the right hand, we could conceivably keep that F held or repeat it as the left hand moves down its final progression. Again, I'll play it from measure 9. That works. And honestly, guys, because part of our composition process is revising what we've already done, what I'd like to do is just go ahead and pick something and not wait too long before we put something on the page. That's another takeaway for you guys. Don't be so scared to put something down on the page. You can always change it later. So what I'd like to do is finish out that melody with some Fs, and I have a hunch that we might change that down the road, but I want to go. Yep, let's put a dotted half note there, and let's tie it to another one. We haven't had any ties in our right hand yet. There we go. And then why don't we, for now, rest in the final measure. Now, depending on where we go in the next section, which either would be to repeat to the beginning of what we have here or to move on, when we get to that point where we're figuring out what's next, we may decide to put some right hand content into that final measure. But it might be more like what we see in measure 4, where it actually is pickup material into the next section. So because of that, I kind of want to just leave that blank. I'm going to play this one more time, and then we're going to get into our next pop quiz. Here is our song that we've written in not even 2 weeks, because it's been like a week and a day. This is pretty cool. Here's where we're at so far with our composition. By the way, we need to come up with a name for this thing. I'm going to ask for your help with that too. Not a bad start for a week and a day, you guys. Oh, Camille just put down Supermoon as a name for this song. That's pretty cool. I like that. I'm going to keep that in the back pocket. That's a good option. But I'm going to ask you guys to vote over the next couple of weeks, too, on titles. This has been a fun project. But you guys, I'm really happy with where we're at so far. Next week, we're going to spice this thing up by talking harmony inversions, by talking rhythm in the left hand, by adding some more expressive rhythms in the right hand, and then just firming up this piece. You guys ready for pop quiz number 2? Let's hit it. All right. Pop quiz number 2. Here we go. This is something that has to do with melody. That's what we've been talking about today. Specifically, it's a question about a major scale that we've been talking about today. So, our pop quiz number 2, we need to write 2 dash and then your answer. Chad Miller, coronavirus blues. Yep, that's pretty topical. That could work. Although coronavirus blues needs to be more frantic and confused. But good call. I like a lamb, Tina. Cool. Whisper. Great ideas. All right, but you guys are sidetracking me. I got to give away a free song credit. So 2 dash and then your answer. The question is, in the B flat major scale, what scale degree is G? Your answer would be 2 dash and then whatever you think. Is it the first scale degree? Hopefully no one puts that. Is it second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, or seventh? First correct answer gets it, and I believe our winner is Jackson Bryant. Yep. I'm seeing 2-6. The correct answer is the 6th. So G is the 6th scale degree. B flat is 1, C is 2, D is 3, E flat is 4, F is 5, G is 6. Great job. So Jackson, you nailed it. Dave, Sarah, Tina, hey, at least you tried. I appreciate the chat on that one. But if you forget, you guys, and if you don't remember, you can walk through your scale and count, right? We already know there's a B flat and an E flat in our key signature. The rest of the notes are just the normal keys, so we can count through. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. All right, good job, you guys. Jackson, you did it, my friend. And there we have it. So what I want to do now is just let you guys know, we've already talked a bit about this, but here's the plan for the rest of the month. Next week, we're going to add some rhythm. That might look like this in the left hand. Okay, that's more advanced than we'll get, I'm sure, but that's how we can take those little chords and spice them up with rhythm. In the right hand, it might look something more like this. Instead of playing our melody like this, we might want to do something like this. And we may not, right? We don't have to change everything. If we love our melody on its own, we can leave it too, but we'll decide together next week. The melody is something that if it becomes too rhythmic, it can be harder to follow and harder to sing along with. All right, and then where do we go from there? Week 4 is going to be arguably one of the most important weeks, okay? We've found that there's a lot of possible correct answers or right notes that we could pull into our composition. Once we know our scale and our progression, we can do all sorts of different things. But what week 4 is all about is parsing it down to what it needs to be. We're spicing it up in week 3, and then we're polishing it in week 4. Often that can mean doing some revisions. It'll also mean adding some expression, some phrase marking, some things like that we talked about earlier this year. And then that's it. We'll go from there. We'll vote on what the next month's topic will be. Once again, I just want to say thank you guys for hanging out and joining these live lessons. We would really appreciate some heartfelt, genuine shares of what we're doing with your friends and family. I don't want just a blanket promo that's going to blast everyone you know. I want you to think about who you know that would really benefit from hanging out with us as we learn the piano. And I want you to let them know. It could be a text or a call, okay? You don't have to use Facebook to engage with us. But thank you guys for hanging out, and we'll leave it there for this week. I'll see you next week where we'll get some rhythm into our composition. And this is called an augmented triad. So we got major. For dominant 7 chords, we have a major triad with a flat 7. It's very similar to what Harry showed, but it has a bit more of a bluesy feel. So